All right, hello again. Another Stopping Socialism video. I'm Donald Kendal, joined as always by Justin Haskins. Justin, this has been a pretty wild week in America, I must say. You know that it's wild when you're almost longing for the days of being worried about coronavirus.
Yeah. Yeah. When you're really pining for that global pandemic, like those are the good old
Yeah,
days.
right.
That's not a good sign.
Simpler times when
Yeah.
we just had to
Yeah.
hoard toilet paper and stay inside. But
Yeah.
obviously, things have gone crazy. I mean, that's a whole nother discussion in itself. Obviously, we'll probably have videos that touch on various aspects of the protests and the riots, and I'll make the distinction between the two. I think that's an important thing to do. But one thing that we were talking about is I really think that this has shown the importance of the Second Amendment. And before anything is taken out of context, let me just say I'm not suggesting that anybody takes up arms and marches into the streets to give out some type of vigilante
Street
justice or anything.
justice.
Right.
Yes.
Not suggesting that in the slightest bit. But I know just from anecdotal evidence, this is anecdotal evidence, just from talking with friends and family, people that you would never expect to say this in my life are saying like, yeah, I'm really thinking about getting a gun, just to protect the house if things continue to go sideways. So like the debate has always been, why do you need a gun? Why do you need a gun? The police are there or whatever, right? You don't need a gun. What are you hunting? You're not hunting. You don't need a gun. Now I think the current events have really shown that when stuff gets really hairy out there, unfortunately, it might be the case where you are left to defend yourself and your family in your own home.
Yeah.
So
And
I
that
think the
and
debate's over.
yeah, I think so too. We've always heard from the other side that, yeah, if you're ever in a bad situation, you just rely on the police.
Mhm.
You just, that's it. Like, you just rely on the police. Why do you need a gun to protect yourself?
Right.
Why do you need that? Well, what if the police are, I don't know, preoccupied with massive protests in the streets and people being killed and police stations being burned to the ground? What if you have complete anarchy? And don't for a long time, anyone who said anything like that would be labeled you're just a nutcase. You're a total nutcase, right? Get out the tinfoil hats kind of thing, right? But the truth is, we're seeing that happening in
Right.
some cities across the country. We're seeing people lose their minds in many respects and just take advantage of the situation and just create absolute chaos. And yeah, I think that this has proven that defending yourself, having the ability to defend yourself, not even necessarily actually doing it, but just having the ability to defend yourself is incredibly important. And the flip side of that, and again, I'm not in any way advocating for violence or saying that we should have any sort of violent action against the government or anything even remotely close to that. But on the flip side, it amazes me that the same people who are marching in the streets saying that we should essentially, in some cases, just get rid of the police. The police are terrible. The police are awful. You can't trust the police, can't trust the government. They're murdering people. You're hearing that kind of language all over the place. Are the same people who don't want the citizenry to have any kind of defense for themselves if you have a tyrannical government. I mean, I don't understand that. If the government is capable of being tyrannical. And I think everyone marching in the streets right now, if you walk down the street and you said to them, do you think it's possible that we could live in a America someday where the government is incredibly tyrannical and just takes away all your rights? I bet all those protesters would say, yep, I
Sure.
do think that's possible. If you think it's possible, then don't you want the citizenry to have the ability to protect themselves against that government? Of course you do.
Right.
And that's the whole point of these protests, is to go out there and say, we think the government is doing something terrible and we don't want it to happen anymore. So I don't understand the disconnect there.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. I remember like, being told the idea that like, chaos or societal disruption is never more than 24 hours away or something. The actions of this past week have proven that. I mean, the escalation of this stuff in just short amount of times is just frightening. There was, one day it was in Minneapolis and they were burning down a police station. The next day, there was a store that was broken into just down the street. And I live in the suburbs here. So it's just like, if it gets hairier even than that, and, granted, this is kind of like a building thing. And I'm sure that the lockdowns and the incredibly high unemployment due to all the COVID lockdowns have, agitated this beyond what you could have imagined. I'm sure that plays a role in this. But regardless of that, you need to be able to protect yourself in your own house in case, for whatever reason, part of that riot is directed towards you in any way, justified or not. Like, you need to be able to defend yourself. And like I said, anecdotally, I'm just hearing a lot of stories of friends and family talking about how, that they might be purchasing a gun. And apparently, this is not just anecdotal evidence, because I have an article here. I'll try to pull it up. But it's basically showing that first time firearm purchasing is like is going like crazy. And
Yeah.
now this was evidence, or this was data that was compiled over kind of like the COVID lockdowns or whatever. And I cannot imagine that it's getting worse because of all of these protests. I guarantee that it's only going up.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, and again, I mean, because again, if somebody is watching this and they're saying, oh, well, these guys, of course they're saying that, a couple white guys and there's black people in the street protesting and it's somehow related, or like it has nothing to do with that. Put yourself in the position of someone who's a protester. And again, go down to one of these protests and ask protesters, whether they're peaceful or violent or whoever they are at these protests, because there's obviously a mix of people. Ask any of them whether they're concerned that maybe someday there might be some, massive group of people that are out to get them. Mm-hmm. I'm sure they would say yes. I'm sure that they could imagine an America where you have a riot that is not composed of people who are somewhat sympathetic to their cause, but rather sympathetic to a totally different, radical, terrible cause on the other side.
Sure.
And so would they want the ability to protect themselves and their family in those cases? Like, of course they would. So I just don't understand why people can't see it that way. I mean, that's really at the heart of what the Second Amendment is.
Yeah.
It's all about having the ability to protect yourself, to protect your country, to protect your communities. That's what this is all about. It's not meant for people who are abusing the law and killing people unjustly. Those people should go to prison for that. It's meant to protect people who are law-abiding citizens who are not harming other people, but instead who are interested in protecting themselves, their families, and their communities.
Yeah, here, how about this? Nationally, gun sales in April. So this is in April. This is, almost a month ago here. We're up 71% over last year, and already the FBI has recorded 15 million background checks in 2020. Again, this is just through the first 4 months of the year, which is more than half the total number of all the checks last year. So yeah, it seems like people are going to really exercise their Second Amendment rights. I think that is a trend, and I think that the next politician that comes up and talks about how the Second Amendment needs to be kind of reeled in, it's going to be laughed off the stage. I'd even go further and talk about like the AR-15. Like suddenly the AR-15, the argument, why would you ever need one of those, seems to be out the door too. It's like suddenly, if there's a giant mob of rioters that are descending on your home, suddenly high occupants or whatever the high volume clips don't seem that crazy anymore.
Yeah. I mean, look, the idea that you should just call the police and wait for them to come fix your problems is ridiculous. It's absurd. And this whole situation has proven how absurd it is, because the police can't even fix their own problems.
Sure.
So when the police are running away from rioters who are burning down police stations, why, if that's the situation in a riot, then why would I think the police can protect everybody else?
Yeah.
Like, they can't, clearly.
Yeah.
And so you need to have the ability to protect yourself. That's what you need. You need to have that ability. I mean, there's just no question. And again, not just from riots, not just from someone who's just a criminal, who's a regular home invasion or something like that, but also from the government, from everyone. That's the whole point of the Second Amendment. It may not be politically correct in some ways to talk about it that way, but that was very plainly the purpose of the Second Amendment. And it came out in a time when communities were protecting themselves from all sorts of issues and problems that existed in the world, but that included a tyrannical government. And so for them, it made perfect sense to protect that right. And here in America, because we've had a relatively free society for so long, we've become so accustomed to it that we forget that it's very possible for free societies to disappear and to go away. And the Second Amendment is there to help make sure that that doesn't happen. Hopefully, you never have to use your Second Amendment right. That's the hope, right? You never have to use it.
Right.
That's what we all want. But there may come a time when you have to use it. And you want it to be there when that time comes. You don't want to be on the phone with 911 while there's a riot outside your door, or just a single person outside your door trying to break it down. You don't want to be in that situation.
Right.
And that's why the Second Amendment.
Yeah, I mean, here's a perfect example of that. There was a video that was like kind of going viral. There's a billion videos right now going viral. But there was a video of a guy that was recording a protest walking outside of his house, right? He's like, he and his buddy were outside this window. And they were recording it, and the guy was giving a thumbs up, like, I fully support what you guys are protesting.
Yes,
over,
I saw
right?
this. Yep.
And I don't know if some of the protesters thought that they were giving him the finger or something like that, but they started throwing rocks through the window. Okay.
Yeah.
So let's just say that the protests went out of hand right at that moment, and 45 people just started rushing this person's house. For a person giving a thumbs up to the march that was going on.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't seem like this seems like a very possible thing nowadays. It's frightening.
It was amazing because so you're right, they threw bricks or rocks or something into the window, smashed the window smashed. The guy then started yelling out to the protesters saying, I'm on your side.
Right.
I'm on your side. And it didn't matter. I mean, it could easily just have been, like you said, totally and completely misinterpreted. And all of a sudden you're in a situation where they're all rushing at them. And now what? And what happens if that guy, instead of screaming, I'm on your side, starts screaming, hey, what the heck? What are you guys doing? Why'd you do that? Right? Starts yelling profanities at the person because they're mad. Well, then it could very easally turn into a situation like that.
Right.
And
it's
again, not hard to imagine.
And again, I am not endorsing somebody get their AR-15 and march into the streets and,
of course
take care of this justice themselves, or take any like enjoyment out of defending their home or anything like that. But like, when it comes down to it, you need to be able to protect yourself. And that's the realization that obviously a lot of Americans are coming to with that stat that I read and that anecdotal evidence about friends and family that are now having to make that decision about being able to defend their home if the worst comes to worst and you're put on hold when you dial 911. So the debate over the Second Amendment is over, I believe. Justin, any last words you want to say? I'll say that if you're interested in this video and more, you can find us at Stopping Socialism TV on YouTube, Stopping Socialism on Facebook. We also have an Instagram account. Justin, any last words?
No last words.
All right. Thank you so much. We'll talk to you later.